in our breath lies the power to change our lives. And our tagline is change your breath, change your life, and ultimately change the world. So we have developed a couple of products that I'd like to talk a little bit about today. One is the Body Stream carbon dioxide suit, and the other is the Carbohaler. The Body Stream, you fill it up with carbon dioxide and the CO2 is absorbed through your skin. And the Carbohaler, you inhale it and gain the experience from doing that. But first, let's talk a little bit about carbon dioxide and what it is, what it does. So when we talk about global warming, we usually talk about carbon dioxide as the bad guy. And the reason is because there is an increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So during the last 65 years, it has increased by about 35% from 313 when they started measuring in Hawaii to today's level of 421. And that is ppm, that is parts per million. So 421 means 0.04%. So it's very, very little. But still the increase is there, meaning that we are exposed to more carbon dioxide from the atmospheric air. Further, we spend about 80 to 90% of our time indoors. And the typical indoor air contains about 2 to 3 times as much carbon dioxide as outdoors. And studies shows that in our bedroom, they could go up to even 3,500 ppm. In other words, almost 8 times as much as in the atmospheric air. Here you see the graph in the study, and it's usually the later hours when you during the sleep. And in this study, they had the window closed and the door closed. And that's why the CO2 levels climb up a lot, because we humans, we are carbon dioxide factories. We produce carbon dioxide and we exhale it. And here in another study, where they measure the levels in the car, you can get an understanding of how fast the levels of carbon dioxide can increase. So when they started, the car, when it was empty, it was about the CO2 levels the same as in the atmosphere. And then after just 25 minutes, 4 people in a car, the ventilator was on, but the levels climbed to 3,000 ppm from around 400. So almost an 8-fold increase. When there were 2 people for 45 minutes, it went up to almost 5,000 ppm. And only 1 person, but during 60 minutes, it climbed to 3,500. So what I'm trying to say here is that the levels of carbon dioxide that we are exposed to, they are increasing and increasing. And during Corona, a lot of us, we wore a mask. And in this study, they checked 5 different masks. And the N95 mask, which is considered the most secure one, the CO2 levels climbed to up to 6,000 ppm in just 1 hour. So here is an interesting video where they have just published on TikTok, their kids, and the increase of CO2 levels in face masks. Well, they may lead to mouth breathing and overbreathing. So these kids, they just open their mouth when they wore the mask. So why is this? Yeah, it's because carbon dioxide controls our breathing. And it does so via pH. So carbon dioxide is produced in our body all the time. It's called a waste product. I don't call it a waste product. I think it's a fantastic gas that we need to have optimum balance of in our body. So carbon dioxide is produced when oxygen together with nutrients are burnt in our mitochondria, where that is where we produce the majority of our energy. And also in that process, not only the energy, which is called ATP, is produced, but also water and heat and carbon dioxide. So the more we move around, the more our metabolism increases and the more carbon dioxide is produced. That's why we breathe faster when we are out jogging, for example, compared to if we sit still. So carbon dioxide is produced, which lowers pH. And when it reaches a certain level, the breathing center in our brainstem is triggered and an inhalation takes place. So, and then on the following exhale, we exhale the excess carbon dioxide that is produced in our body. And the pH is again raised to the normal level, and then a new breathing cycle starts. So that's how it continues. And in today's society, a lot of us, we find life a bit stressful, which means that we are usually engaging in hyperventilation. Evolutionary-wise, we were able to, when stress came, we usually moved our muscle. We went into fight flight, either to run away from the danger or fight the danger. Today, the stress consists of a stressful text message or an angry customer barking at us at the phone. We get stressed, but we don't engage in physical activity. But our stress response is the same, which includes increasing our breathing. So a lot of us, we have a tendency to breathe too much, which means we take in too much oxygen and we exhale too much carbon dioxide. And that is a big problem. If you also add inactivity to this, where less carbon dioxide is produced, and then you add food that has a low pH, like junk food, coffee, alcohol, energy drinks, Coca-Cola, etc., then we describe a lot of us who we are stressed out, we are inactive, and we eat junk food, which actually lowers the pH, and then we need to compensate by breathing faster to restore the pH. So in today's society, a lot of people have a low-grade form of hyperventilation. And why that is important, because we know that we're so in so much need for oxygen, and we may think that taking in more oxygen is better, but it's actually not. Just like a car, our body needs the right amount of oxygen. The car needs the right amount of fuel. And it's actually carbon dioxide that paves the way for oxygen, because as we just discussed, it triggers the inhale. It is not lack of oxygen that makes us take the next breath. It is the buildup of carbon dioxide. And further, carbon dioxide has a relaxing, widening effect on the airways. So they widen the airways, and further carbon dioxide helps widen the blood vessels. So the airways and blood vessels, they are kept open. And then, which is called the Bohr effect, carbon dioxide helps to kick off the oxygen from the hemoglobin, so that the oxygen can leave the blood and enter into the muscles and brain and liver and etc. and participant in the energy production. So oxygen is crucial, but carbon dioxide is crucial for efficient oxygenation. That's how you can put it. So this guy, Arthur C. Gayton, he was not only an author, and he published what is considered one of the most profound medical textbooks that are used by medical schools all over the world. The first edition was published in 1956. And apart from being an author, he was also a medical doctor and professor of physiology. And he says, all chronic pain, illnesses, and suffering are caused by lack of oxygen at the cellular level. So we really need to pay attention to that, the delivery of the oxygen. And for that, carbon dioxide is key. So if we think about the fundamental difference between these two states, stress and panic and deep relaxation. It's not sleep, it's not food, it's not if you had a great thing going on in your life, or if you have a lot of setbacks, the major difference is your breathing, and specifically carbon dioxide. In stress and panic, the breathing is fast. In relaxation, the breathing is low and slow and rhythmically, meaning we retain more of the carbon dioxide produced. In stress and panic, we exhale a lot of the carbon dioxide. That is why bag breathing works. If I have a panic attack and come to the hospital, I get a bag to breathe in and out through. And it works because we exhale about 100 times more carbon dioxide than we inhale. And when we exhale it in a bag, we will rebreathe some of the carbon dioxide. And that helps us to open up the airways and open up the blood vessels, so the stressed panic brain can get the blood and oxygen it needs. And this technique is also used, this knowledge is also used in brain surgery. They because usually they are not conscious, they are put in a ventilator, the person going through the brain surgery, and they put them into a state of hyperventilation, because they want to shrink the brain. They want to have less blood to the brain, so there will be less blood and more room for the instruments. That may be good during brain surgery, but probably not so good if we live our daily life and we want to be a good communicator or a nice friend or solve a problem at work. Then we obviously want to have our brain fully oxygenated. So just to conclude here about carbon dioxide, that we are exposed to more and more carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide drives our breathing. And it's basically, we are at a crossroad. If we can't adapt and learn to tolerate the higher levels of carbon dioxide, we will be caught in a stressful breathing pattern, which will enforce that we stay in a fight-flight state. We become more reactive. It's harder for us to learn new things. And if we learn to tolerate these higher levels of carbon dioxide that we are exposed to, it's actually a way for us to increase our awareness, increase our consciousness, to become smarter, kinder, more cooperative. And let's look a little bit about the history of carbon dioxide. So maybe you've been to a spa at some point, and you know, actually the name spa, it's a town in Belgium, and they have a hot spring there. And the hot springs, what they have found is that they have high levels of carbon dioxide. This picture is from the Blue Lagoon in Iceland. I've been there a couple of times. It's super, super relaxing. And the reason why hot springs are so popular, they've been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. That is because people find health benefits. They notice that the circulation improves, their skin quality improves. And to a large extent, that could be attributed to the high levels of carbon dioxide in these hot springs. So where we are today, people have tried to mimic that. And that is one of the product I started with, showing the body stream. That's a way to mimic these hot springs. Very few of us live close to a hot spring or are able to go there. So you can bring the benefits of a hot spring into your own home. So in regards to the history, this is a really interesting book, Carbon Dioxide in Medicine, by Dr. Achilles Rose, an American doctor, who the book was originally published in 1905. And he goes back all the way to the 16th century when he describes the history of carbon dioxide treatments. And in the book, he talks about how carbon dioxide treatments were used successfully in many, many different ailments, like whooping cough, asthma, anemia, heart and circulation problems, digestive issues, PMS, impotence, difficult labor, and more. And here you can see images from his book. Remember, published in 1905. So here is from Manhattan State Hospital, where they took a bath with carbon dioxide, and they covered the bath so that the CO2 should not escape. Here is a boy inhaling carbon dioxide. Here is the Rose carbon dioxide gas generator to put it up your ass, actually. And this is a gas bath where you absorb the carbon dioxide through your skin. So your body is immersed in, you go into this, what you call it, this furniture, and it's filled up with carbon dioxide that you will absorb through the skin. And it's really an interesting read. I have republished it, so it's available on Amazon, or you can download it for free on consciousbreathing.com. And the same with this book. And this book was actually published in 1794, written by an English doctor, John Ewart. And it's about 2 cases of ulcerated breast cancer treated with carbon dioxide. You wouldn't imagine that you used that 220 years ago, or 230 years ago even. And what they say in the book, what strikes us in the 2 cases with the greatest astonishment is the almost instantaneous relief of pain, which never failed to follow the application of the CO2 gas. And when applying the CO2 gas, not only the smell from the sore was less foul smelling, but its surface showed a disposition to heal. So they were able to create a lot of positive effect with applying carbon dioxide to the cancerous breast. And further, this book, it has not so much about to do with carbon dioxide. It's called Shut Your Mouth and Save Your Life, written by George Catlin. It came out in 1870. And Catlin, he spent 30 years of his life between 1830 to 1860 to document and paint the lives of the Native Americans in North, Central, and South America. He visited more than 150 tribes with more than 2 million inhabitants. But the reason why I bring it up here when we talk about carbon dioxide, the history of carbon dioxide, is because shutting your mouth and breathing through your nose means that you slow down your breathing. You will retain more of the carbon dioxide produced in your body. And one thing that he noticed was that the Indian tribes, they had superior health. There were no infant mortality, no deformities in the children, and no child deaths from disease, compared to the bill of mortality in the civilized world in the 1850s. Around 50% died already before the age of 5, and only 1 in 4 survived beyond 25 years of age. And he said also in the book, I witnessed thousands of women breastfeed their kids, but not a single time have they not ensured after breastfeeding, when the baby is about to sleep, they always ensured that the lips were together. If not, they put them together. So there was old knowledge that maybe we have forgotten in the civilized world. Another interesting article that came out it was a study, came out in 1830, the treatment of pneumonia by inhalation of carbon dioxide, Yandel Henderson, professor at Yale. And they noticed that in pneumonia, it is the blocking of the lung airways that gets blocked by thick and sticky secretion. That's the critical factor which produce lung collapse, and that gives a foundation for bacteria to grow, and you may develop pneumonia. So, and the lung collapse is called atelectasis. So after surgical operations, massive atelectasis of the lung is a rather frequent occurrence. This was in the 1930s, and is the condition from which post-operative pneumonia develops. And the lung collapse is prevented and relieved, and the risk of pneumonia is eliminated by the inhalation of carbon dioxide. So they inhaled 5% carbon dioxide, and the pneumonia went away because the carbon dioxide opened up the airways so that the immune system could enter into that place where there was the lung collapse, and also the stale air and the trapped air, that it could be ventilated out, because the carbon dioxide in itself, by inhaling it stimulated a more forceful breathing. So the carbon dioxide led to two things: more forceful breathing and open airways. If you only do forceful breathing, then you will exhale more carbon dioxide and you will actually go into more narrow airways. Another person who has contributed a lot to the understanding of carbon dioxide is Professor Konstantin Buteyko, a Russian doctor and professor who made a discovery when he was only 29 years old. He had a life-threatening high blood pressure, which would often exceed 220. And he cured himself by changing his breathing. And that was the start of the Buteyko method. And he made that discovery in 1952. And he then spent the remaining years of his life, 50 years, and trained hundreds of doctors in Russia and helped thousands of patients with what was seen as incurable diseases, like asthma, cancer, and diabetes. And this is another interesting book, The Hyperventilation Syndrome. It was written by Dr. Frances Ames from South Africa. And she studied 40 patients, and in all of them except one, because that person was too afraid to actually do it. In all of them except one, the symptoms and signs they were reproduced by hyperventilation. The one who couldn't, well, he was too afraid to hyperventilate. And the problems they had, it was all kinds of things like epilepsy, tinnitus, dizziness, racing heart, headaches, pins and needles, dysmenorrhea, and distended belly, excessive sweating, back pain, fainting. That's quite a lot. And all of them were able to be reproduced just by engaging in hyperventilation. So that was a bit of a history of carbon dioxide and its usage. I would say that there are a lot more to it than that. So this was just a sneak peek. There are many more important people that have contributed to the knowledge that is out there. But by all means, again, this book is republished. It's available on the website. You can check it out, sorry. And some of the benefits then of carbon dioxide is that it is antibacterial. This knowledge has been used in the food industry since the 1930s, where they packaged several types of food in carbon dioxide in order to prevent bacterial overgrowth. So here is an interesting study where they noticed that after 24 hours, the number of Staphylococcus bacteria in the blood was about 50 times less when they had been exposed to 5% carbon dioxide compared to normal air, which is about 0.04%. And another interesting study, it was done, it was actually not a study, but it was done on hens, and it was a more practical way of solving a problem. The farmers, they noticed that when the summer came, it became hotter in the barns. The hens, they lay eggs that were more fragile. And they then concluded that the hens were hyperventilating, meaning they blew off more CO2, right? So they lowered the level of CO2 in the body. And what they did was that they gave them carbonated water, because carbonated water contains a lot of carbon dioxide. That's what we put in the water when we want to carbonate water, right? Carbon dioxide, or it's also called carbonic acid. And what happened was that the hens, they retained more calcium and got harder eggshells. And this is applicable to us humans as well. Calcium there is a risk that we get more fragile in our bones because we will lose more calcium if we engage in too much hyperventilation. And further, carbon dioxide makes the smooth muscles relax. The smooth muscles, those are the ones we can't control by will compared to our skeletal muscles. So they surround the airways, the blood vessels, and many other areas, as you see here, the uterus, the stomach, the intestines, the bladder. So they start to work better, these type of muscles, when we have optimum levels of CO2. When we lower the levels of carbon dioxide, well, then they may go into cramp. If the uterus goes into cramp, we call it PMS. If the blood vessels goes into cramp, we call it angina pectoris. If the airways goes into cramp, we call it bronchospasm or asthma, etc. And then, of course, a question is carbon dioxide safe? Can we really trust using carbon dioxide? And one testimony to that is that if you're about to have keyhole surgery in the stomach, you want to fill up the abdominal area in order to give room for the instruments. And the gas used to fill it up is carbon dioxide. And the reason why it is considered so extremely safe is because every single cell in our whole body produces carbon dioxide. Well, not the blood cells, but the other cells, they produce carbon dioxide. So all the transportation system in our body knows exactly how we should get rid of excess carbon dioxide. So let's talk a little bit about the body stream carbon dioxide bath. Here is from the Conscious Breathing Summit we arranged in September 2022. It's me, James Nestor, and Dr. Theodore Belford, who is a dentist. He's from New York. And he was very excited after going into the suit and being exposed to the carbon dioxide and absorb it through the skin. I feel 20 years younger, he said. I will recommend this to all my clients. And here you can see the suit, how you put it on, how it works, how you fill it up. It's my colleague Steve here, and this is Robin. This is also from the same summit where we had people experience it. And the feedback was really good. A lot of it feel that they experience an inner calm. So my description of it is parasympathetic deluxe. So as I mentioned earlier, we looked at the carbon dioxide. We were exposed to more and more carbon dioxide from the atmospheric air. The levels increase, and we spend a lot of time indoors. And the more people we are, the more CO2 is built up in the room. And we have to learn to tolerate higher levels. So going into this suit is a way to do that. And what happens when you go into the suit is that you make your body run a little more efficient. You remove blockages, you remove friction by when you absorb the carbon dioxide, you will open up the airways and open up the blood vessels so that the blood and air can flow more freely. So here is an interesting review where they looked at CO2 therapy and the effect on the microcirculation in treating severe lymphedema. Lymphedema, you have swollen legs, usually, or swollen arms, because the lymphatic fluid can't circulate well enough. And when they saw what they saw in the study, that the lymph flow was restored in the lower body region, because that's the area which they exposed to carbon dioxide in all the 15 subjects. So here you can, here is it was published in this journal. And here you see before the baseline, you see the legs, and here you see after 10 carbon dioxide treatments, there's a huge difference in the lymph flow. And what they conclude is that there was a significant reduction both in body volume and lymph edema in these people. Here is another interesting study showing that when exposed to carbon dioxide, tumor slowed down by 48% in 2 weeks. So you see the left rat, the tumor is twice as big as the right rat, which were exposed to carbon dioxide. In this study, it's another study, after 4 weeks, the carbon dioxide treated tumors were 5 times as small in size compared to the control. So this was transcutaneous application of carbon dioxide. Dr. Lewis Coleman, he has written the book 50 Years Lost in Medical Advance. I think it came out a couple of years ago. And he has studied 1,500 people and showed that carbon dioxide protects tissues and optimizes surgical outcome. And his view is that carbon dioxide offers the most potent, safest, and practical medical treatment ever discovered. So here he is in the body stream suit, and they performed him together with my colleague Steve, they performed a transcutaneous oximetry pressure test. So that's a way to measure the body's ability to deliver oxygen to the tissues. A lot of the time we think that we need to push oxygen in there in order for the oxygen to get delivered. But here we see, by just having the body absorb carbon dioxide for 15 minutes, the TCPO2, it increased by 300% from 14.0 to, I think, 42.8. So here we see a video. The start was 14.0, and here he is in the carbon dioxide suit after 3 minutes, up to 23. Steadily increasing. All the way up to 42. So this is what we really want to achieve, right? We want to achieve efficient oxygenation. That's why we breathe, and that's why it's much better to have an erect posture compared to a slumped posture. An erect posture will make it easier for the diaphragm to work and bring the air down into the lower part of the lungs. Slow breathing is much more efficient than high chest, fast breathing. It uses up more muscle power, and there are not so many alveoli here. So since we do this 1,000 times an hour, we really want to do it in an efficient way. So the point is, we want to deliver oxygen to our tissues in the most optimum efficient way. And here what we just saw was that carbon dioxide is really important for that. And that's why it's so beneficial to engage in low, slow, rhythmic breathing during your day. Here are some of our experience with carbon dioxide. So it's me and my colleague Steve here on the pictures. We exposed our face and head and all kinds of things to carbon dioxide. So here is a foot bath recipe where you use about 5 liters of water and you can take a foot bath for 10 to 15 minutes. And you can pour in approximately 1 to 2 tablespoons of baking soda and the same amount of ascorbic acid or citric acid. And the acid, you pour it in gradually so that not all CO2 is formed at the same time. And this has a great effect on the circulation. Here is, it was a Japanese study where they had people with diabetes foot taking carbon dioxide baths. So this woman, she came to the hospital in a wheelchair. It was a question whether she should amputate her foot or not. And she took 2 carbon dioxide per day, 10 minutes each time. So 20 minutes per day, not a lot. Here you see after 1 month, huge improvement. No amputation was needed. After 3 months, she could walk out of the hospital on her own. And what carbon dioxide does is that it draws blood to the area. And when you bring blood, you will bring oxygen, you will bring the immune system, and the body can heal and repair and function as it's supposed to do. Another thing you can do is a carbon dioxide face bath. So I usually do it 5 to 6 minutes because that's how long the CO2 will last for. And I usually use a straw to breathe in and out through so that I can have my head down into the water all the time. You don't need to use a straw, but then you need to go up when you can't hold your breath for any longer. And one thing you can do is to take 1 to 2 tablespoons of baking soda and the same amount of ascorbic acid or citric acid. And again, pour in the acid a little at a time. So you're not forming all the CO2 at once. Or you can do as I do, use a soda stream. So I use 2 bottles of soda stream. That's perfect. And that would lasts for about 6 minutes. That's why I'm using it, doing it 6 minutes. You feel really refreshed because you will draw blood to the face. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about the carbohaler. So here I'm using it. I'm inhaling about 4% carbon dioxide. So that's 40,000 ppm. And I do that for 4 minutes. And I'm breathing about 20 breaths per minute here. And then I felt super strong. So I decided to do push-ups. And I was able to do 57, which is really a lot for me. I remember in the study I participated with James Nestor, 3 weeks before the study, I did push-ups every day because I wanted to be strong in the study. And then we did it in the study every day for 3 weeks. So for 6 weeks, I did push-ups and my goal was to reach 50, but I couldn't. I only reached 49. So when I can now, almost 5 years later, do 57, it tells me that the carbon dioxide inhalation does something. But it's important to say here with both these products, the carbohaler and the body stream, we are very much in an experimental phase. We are still learning a lot. Okay, there I'm done. I'm completely exhausted, as you can see. And finally, I'd like to finish off with a testimonial. We have a small office in Sri Lanka where we have developed the carbohaler. And one of my colleagues, his brother had a fortunate accident. So my colleague's name Shamira, and his brother is Kamud. And he got electrocuted and was his heart stopped for 15 minutes. He got into a coma and he's been there since. And 30 to 40 times per day, the oxygen saturation sank below 92%. And that was because mucus formation in the airways. So what they had to do was to suck out the mucus with a device. Every time they noticed on the oxygen saturation meter, and they noticed on his body that he didn't get enough oxygen. So these problems, they lasted for 7 months. until he started using the carbohaler for 3 minutes per day. So we actually developed the carbohaler just to see if we could help him. And after just a few weeks, the oxygen levels, they only went down below 92%, 1 to 2 times per day, because the carbon dioxide helped open up the airways. Further, the warfarin drug, which is a blood thinner, that could be reduced from 4 milligrams per day to 1.5. And his need for sleep went down from 18 hours to only 10 hours per day, telling us that the carbon dioxide helped improve his nervous system, because he was doing the same thing every single day, eating the same food, doing the same gymnastics, laying there in bed in his coma. And then after some months, we agreed that we actually don't know if it is beneficial for him, even though we noticed the improvement. So we decided to stop for a couple of months, stop giving him carbon dioxide. And the problems came back. He was again back to 30 to 40, even 50 times per day, where the oxygen dropped below 92%. And then when we started, or when his brother Chamira started giving him CO2 again, he again improved in his airways. Here is a study about on epileptic seizures, where they saw that 5% carbon dioxide is a potent, fast-acting inhalation anticonvulsant. So the author of the study says that seizures in the patients observed in our study terminated typically within 1 minute after 5% carbon dioxide was applied. Here you see the graphs. The blue there is the carbon dioxide after it was applied. So they started to apply it after the seizure had started. And the seizure ended very, very quickly. So carbon dioxide has an effect on a lot of different functions in our body, everything from the blood vessels to the airways to the brain. And my conclusion is that increased carbon dioxide tolerance leads to increased consciousness. And my experience firsthand with the importance of carbon dioxide. First, I took the Buteyko breathing course in 2009 with Patrick McKeown, and I learned a lot from Buteyko and from Patrick, of course, about the importance of carbon dioxide. But it was really when I did my first jog, a 1-hour jog, where I decided to take it to the next level, where it really hit home how important it was, where I was only breathing through my nose, and I tried to slow down my breathing as much as possible. So every breath was kind of a little pain. I felt breathless. I felt like I need to take a big breath. But when I came home, I managed to do it the whole hour. I came home and I felt super relaxed. So relaxed that I still 3 hours afterward, I was still sitting at the kitchen table, just looking around, feeling like in a state of bliss. And that is what I think is happening right now. The CO2 levels increase, and we are increasing our awareness, our consciousness. We are able to slow down and zoom out and make better and better decisions and invent new things. And that is really what is needed, because we are facing a lot of challenges with the population steadily increasing. And we need, I think, to take a giant leap in our consciousness in order to solve the issues we have created. So, thank you.